Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're tuning in. Welcome to Present Potential. I'm your host Hassan, and I'm so grateful for everyone who keeps joining and listening, even though I make a lot of mistakes. And that's part of the reason why we have this podcast, because it's so beautiful to make mistakes and be our authentic selves. Today, I'm joined by a guest who is really inspiring me in the things that he's done. We've connected over LinkedIn. Um, he's a leader in one of the big tech companies. He's also launched his own podcast and newsletter and has so many followers that he engages with and shares deep insights throughout the things that he continuously creates and provides. I'm really grateful for him to be being a guest here, and I'm so excited to dive in to listen about his story and also to gain some insights. So, without further ado, Ben, welcome to Present Potential.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Excited to chat.
Great. So I'd like to start off by just asking you the first question, which is really basic or it could be very detailed. Who is Ben?
Oh, I don't know. Me. Um, I don't know where to go with that one. It's kind of I guess the general like tell me about yourself. I've been at Google for almost 13 and a half years now. Feels like a very long time, but it's a really great place to be. Kind of successive roles there. Currently leading the programmatic sales team for Canada, which I love. Team is great. Clients are really interesting, really challenging in a good way. And it's just a really fast moving space. There's a lot that goes on in the world of programmatic and so many different formats and channels and inventory partners that we get to work with. So it's a lot of fun. Beyond that, you mentioned I run Captivate with a partner. It's all about the psychology of persuasion. We started as a newsletter. We've expanded to kind of any channel we can find. You can find us on all the socials. And we try to get out and do as many like speaking engagements and training and corporate workshops and things like that. And actually just got back from a conference last night with the Canadian Agricultural Marketing Association, which seems a little bit random, and it is, but it just goes to show that like the psychology of persuasion is relevant for any industry as long as you're working with other humans. Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun working on that.
Fascinating. I'd love to go deeper and maybe even start from the beginning. Did you always want to go into tech and psychological persuasion, even though like they might be worlds apart, but they're also similar in ways? What was it that really drove you from a young age? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
God, I don't remember. I think I wanted to be a banker because they made lots of money. And then I found out they have to work 100 hours a week, and I was not interested enough in making money to give up all my free time. I did an MBA in '08, '09, which was a very bad time to graduate in, in the spring of '09. I ended up working in a boutique consulting firm called Level 5 for a couple of years. Really great place, learned a ton, really nice team. But while I was there, what they say about consulting is, you get exposure to lots of different industries and lots of different folks, and it's very true. And while I was there, kind of through some of that exposure to the tech space, I just found it really interesting, fast moving, cutting edge for, all the typical reasons, and decided, after consulting, that's kind of where I wanted to be, and worked really hard to build up my resume on that, whether it's getting on client projects, working on internal digital marketing things, starting up the corporate blog, getting involved in events. And then I was lucky enough through all that, and a bit more luck of, someone who happened to know someone at Google, that put me in as a referral, and been there ever since.
Amazing. Wow, what a story. And I can completely resonate with what you're saying in '08 and '09. I completed my master's in finance during that time.
Ooh,
So like it was the
yeah,
best
finance was
time to find a
probably,
job.
yeah. I think I wanted to go into marketing, and a lot of companies came in and said, well, we usually hire six this time of year. Now we're looking for one. But I remember for finance, like one of the banks that, was it Merrill Lynch that went under. And I remember the day that they went under, they also had their like student info session planned that night. And everyone was
Oh.
like, so I'm going to assume that the info session's canceled since they just went bankrupt. Yeah, very, very tough time in finance for sure.
Absolutely. I remember we were around, I think 140 students in the master's course. And in the beginning of the year, I think five of us or six or like just single digits had offers after they complete the degree. And I think everyone's offer was revoked towards the end of the year. It was just one of those
That's
times that,
tough. Yeah.
but, and then, so you did your MBA and you were still exploring what you wanted to go into. And what what attracted you within the boutique firm and the consultancy in terms of like the exposure or the things that you did? What did you find that was exciting?
Exciting in terms of why, like going into tech from there.
Yeah.
Um, Part, I think like the cutting edge and newness of what was coming out, like the iPhone had just launched. So kind of smartphone penetration was really taking off. There was a million different online tools that were like just great to get into and use. It was just kind of the speed of everything and the innovation of it all, and the growth. Like it's working on something that was growing 20 or 30% is just I think it's more exciting than working on something that's working grinding to stay even or to grow at 1 or 2%. And yeah, I think I can't put my finger on exactly what it was, but it was definitely like a strong interest in tech at that point.
I love
And
it.
still
And
is.
then
Yeah.
and you're still doing it as well at the same time. So there's been a journey there focused in tech, exposed to the different types of sectors, and maybe even in terms of like the newsletter that you started. Tell us a little bit about it. Like, what was the drive behind that newsletter? What did you find that you wanted to share with everyone and anyone?
Yeah, so I actually do it with a partner who also works at Google, who's actually on my team a few years ago. And one day he said, like, Ben, can we use a team meeting to share some of the stuff I've been researching and putting it into my sales pitches and finding it really effective? I was like, yeah, of course. So he came in, he presented like three really awesome tactics. Everyone started using it, and I was like, hey, Darren, this is really great. You should build something up with this, start a newsletter, do something. And he's like, yeah, but then he didn't. And I didn't want to start something on the side because he was on my team, and that was a conflict of interest. But then, a year or so later, there was a reorg, and he shifted into a new team and hadn't done anything. So I said, hey, why don't we start this together? And at that point, we just both really liked the content. We thought it was really interesting and useful. It wasn't a let's go out and build a content business and make lots of money or anything like that. It was we like writing, we like designing, we like the content. Let's put it out there and see what happens. And that's kind of still where we're at today. And then a few months into it, people said, really loving the newsletter. Would you come and do a training for my team? And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, sure, I'd love to. That'd be fun. And then we did a few of those, and it's kind of spiraled and snowballed in a good way since then. Where I think part of it is, we work really hard to present well and make it really interesting, and engaging. But also, like it's human behavior. And when you're talking to humans about that, I think it naturally resonates. People just find it a very interesting topic. So I think part of it is luck that the topic that we started on is just something that people are naturally interested in, which is, maybe a little bit lucky for us, but it's worked out so far.
Love that. What a story. And so you've seen the writings and also like what your co-founder was sharing, and you decided to share that with everyone. And then it took a year until you actually launched that. And during that year, what were some of the things that you were thinking about? Did you anyway start writing and maybe reflecting internally with your team and then
Yeah,
start
well,
creating?
we didn't start like bringing in other folks. It was always just the two of us, but it was also like, could we do this? How, like, what would a format of a newsletter be to make it engaging and fun and unique to us? Would we be able to find the time to do it? And I think it was right around the time when like ChatGPT started blowing up, and I was like, oh, let's see what happens if I put in a prompt in ChatGPT, and it wrote me a 500-word newsletter. I mean, it wasn't very good, but it was like
Yeah.
this really easy starting point, and took a whole bunch of editing. Um, and now we use Google's Gemini, not ChatGPT. Not just out of loyalty to Google, but having used them both for a while, we found that one to work better for us. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was just, taking the time to actually do it. And I'm sure there's so many people just like us who were sitting on an idea, something they wanted to start, but taking that first step. And then once you take one and you say like, oh, we're launching this and we're going to do a newsletter every month, you put it out there, and now all of a sudden you're accountable because you said it, and hopefully some people listened, and we've been doing it ever since.
I love that. And it's so true because you had an idea, but it was just an idea and it didn't materialize to anything until you took action. So it's that first step that you took that actually created something. And I'm curious about the name. How did you decide on the name?
Oh, we spent a while on the name, and we had a bunch of different ideas. I can't remember. We were debating between two, and I honestly can't even remember what they were. And then we couldn't decide between them. And Darren said, "Hey, what if we called it Captivate?" And it just instantly resonated. And it was like, that's it. That's way better than the ones we've been talking about. It 100%. We're going to be called Captivate. And it was just like, this flash of brilliance from Darren one day where he just had the name, and it just felt right away.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a prompt in one of the Gemini
No,
or ChatGPT.
we probably tried that and didn't
Yeah.
get anywhere. um, yeah, it was just like one day Darren, it just came to him and
Yeah.
whatever, and we both just loved that name and been happy with it ever since.
Yeah. Such a great name. Like it's really captivating. Like you see
Yeah,
it and you
I
read
mean
it and you're
that's yeah,
like
that's that's the idea. I'm glad the name works.
Great. And then so you started getting interest from people to like run workshops or go and train and provide some of the things that you're actually talking about in the newsletter. How was the first one? If you can remember it, like what was the experience like just sitting down and saying, oh, actually people want us to go and show them things. How
Yeah,
was that?
it was. I mean, it was actually really fun to do. I mean, that first one, I think we've gotten a lot of better at it since then because we've done it a bunch. But just thinking about like, okay, how do we? Part of it is like you write about it every month, and then when you're up presenting, you've got to put it all into practice, and you've
Yeah.
got to be captivating. And so we really worked very hard developing kind of that first talk track that we had. Um, and in terms of like the content, because of the structure of the newsletter, like every month we do a newsletter that is one specific topic. We go deep into like, here's the research behind it, but we spend most of the newsletter on like, here's ways you can put it into use and make it very practical. And so we wanted to bring that to the presentations. We kind of think of ourselves as like we're the middleman or like the translator between this kind of dry academic research down to how you actually use it day to day. So from a content perspective, it wasn't too hard to turn it into, from a bunch of newsletters. And I think we talked about 5 different techniques. So we took 5 different newsletters, and they each became a section of the talk track. Um, and we just spent a lot of time on, Darren is great with the design. So the slides and everything, I think are, the presentation looks beautiful. And just really figuring out like what are the good stories? How do we tell this in an engaging, in a captivating way? A
I
little,
love
little cheesy there, but couldn't help myself. And then of course, you get feedback and you refine and you see like, well, these things land well, and maybe we didn't frame this as well as we did. And said we did one yesterday, and it was a version of that same original talk track, and it sounds quite different now than it did a year ago and the first time, because we just continue. So each time we do it, we just make it. Hopefully, we make it a little bit better, and we take turns on which sections we do. So like, we put our own stamp on, and we take ideas from each other, and we listen to feedback, and yeah, it like anything, it's constantly
it.
refining.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I can sense that partnership as well. So reflecting and improving and then like switching sections and sharing. And I'm wondering like if you were going to do it all over again and you were on your own, would you consider something like that, doing it on your own? Or like there's also a great sense in having a co-founder, a partner, someone that you could reflect with and discuss. How do you see that? Like what do you feel about that aspect of Captivate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have ever done this on my own.
Mm.
Um, Part of it is like me and Darren were good friends already, so it's fun to do something like this with a good friend. And I think we also have very like complementary skills.
Mm.
So whether it's, I do more of the writing, he does more of the graphic design, we both find different ideas that we bring to the table. I think we're both good presenters, but we have very different styles of presentation, which I think like plays well when we present side by side. There's a nice contrast. It's all good and engaging, but it's different styles to do that. And we can learn from each other, and there are things, we give each other tips, and I think we make each other better. And so, yeah, it's always just been a pretty conflict-free, pretty fun partnership. Partly
Mm.
because it's not a high-pressure thing we're doing. If this was a full-time startup, maybe it'd be a different story. But yeah, couldn't ask for a better partner to do this with.
Wow. And so now you have like the content and also your with Google and training and how do you manage your time?
Um, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think that there's a couple things that I think about. So first is I think with anything, a lot of efficiency comes from like surrounding yourself with good people, and whether that's Captivate with Darren. I think the team that I work with at Google are the best in the country at programmatic media. I'm so fortunate to work with them every day. Or whether it's like managing the kids at home with my wife, I'm surrounded by amazing people, which makes it doable. I'd say the other thing that I really think about is um, I'm generally not a perfectionist, and I think that in some ways is really good because most of the things you're going to do, there's like this law of diminishing returns. And the amount of effort it takes to take a project from like a 0 to 8 is probably the same effort it takes to go from 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. And most projects, 8 is more than enough, and it's about the speed and getting more things out and seeing how it lands. There are certainly times when like, yeah, you need to put that extra, big presentation or a big Captivate session, put that time in, make it a 10. But there's a lot of things that don't need to be a 10. I think recognizing that difference, and when you hit that diminishing return point, say, okay, well, this is my time better served taking this from 8 to a 9 or starting the next one, going from 0 to 8 on the next thing. And I think a lot of people like to make everything a 10, and not everything needs to be a 10.
Wow, that's such a great insight because like I was just in an event now and the presenters were saying how they're such perfectionists and they want everything to look great and even when they're presenting they want everything to sound amazing. And I was thinking, okay, like I get that, but also it can hold you back from actually taking action to produce anything that you want to put out there. And
Yep.
I completely hear you about like the if it's at an 8 could be good enough. I mean, it doesn't have to be extremely perfect. And it's the same
Yeah.
thing with this podcast. Like the moment I launched it, I'm not ready. I don't think I'll ever be ready. And I'm still
Yeah.
learning as I go along. And it's great to have that ability to say this is good for the purpose that it's serving. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, once you're there, like, let's say you're at 8 and you're, like the things that you're juggling, you have the kids at home, you have your work, you have the newsletters, the trainings. What what do you tell yourself, or like, how do you instinctively know that this is good? Let's just move on. What comes up?
Um, I don't know. Honestly, that's something I think I've always been pretty good at, even going back to like school, knowing, which projects needed to be a 10 and which projects needed to be an 8.
Mm.
Um, and there's always more work to do than there is time in the day,
Yeah.
regardless of what you're doing or what you're taking on. And it's about prioritizing and making those choices and those trade-offs. And um, sometimes we get it wrong. Certainly, there are things where it's like, okay, yeah, 8 is good enough, and then it happened, and it's like, nope, that one should have been a 9 or a 10, and that was a mistake. And you learn from it, and you bounce back, and you take that to the next time. And there are certain ones where it's like, oh, I made that a 10, and that extra 10 hours could have been used elsewhere. That would have been fine as an 8. And so like there's no hard and fast rule. It's
Mm.
you learn through experience and through mistakes, and you kind of pick up on it over time.
I
Also,
love that.
hopefully you hope you have great people around you to help keep you on track, where they can say like, yeah, this is good where it is. This is what we need to do, and now let's move on to the next one. Or no, this is a priority. We need to make this a 10, and yeah, you figure it out, and hopefully you get it right more than you get it wrong.
Absolutely. Priorities are such a big thing, especially at home for parents. Like when my wife and I had our first daughter, um, our priorities completely changed. And
Absolutely.
it's for anyone listening, my wife and I have really talked about our priorities to understand like what's important for us and what we can focus our energies on. And it's not about how much we love what we're doing or the people that we're with, but the reason I'm sharing this disclaimer is because I told my wife my priority is me, because I used to focus on giving and sharing and helping, but then eventually reached a level that I wasn't able to give anymore and I wasn't serving anyone. And her first priority is not herself or me, are the kids. So it's not aligned, but like just knowing that between us, it works. It's like what you were sharing about your partnership with Darren. Like you both complement each other with the skills that you have. And I feel like that's such a powerful
Yeah.
thing, just knowing what you want to prioritize and focus your time on.
Yeah. And knowing that, as you said, that changes over time when you have your, I've got three kids. When you have kids, those priorities change a whole lot very quickly. Um, there's no right answer on priorities. They can change over time, just like anything else.
Yeah. And then so you mentioned like what you're doing in Google, and I'm not a tech person, or I try to be, but I don't think I know as much as definitely you. But can you share with us a little bit of what you do? It sounds exciting.
I think so. Thank you. So I lead a specialist sales team that focuses on a specific ads product. Um, Kind of the generic term for it is programmatic, which essentially means kind of an automated way to buy mostly display and video ads, but also connected TV and audio, and now even out of home. So it's kind of the tech platform that automates and enables you to buy a lot of these things.
Oh wow, so many questions there. So maybe to start out with, like, what's a typical day like? Is it just sitting in front of a computer and just reading data and programming and but like if you can share with us, I'd really love
Well, I
that.
mean, we're a sales team, so I'm not that technical myself. I know how to use a product, but I definitely don't know how to code the product. We have much smarter people in the engineering and product teams than me. A lot of I kind of think of my job in kind of three distinct elements. One is building the strategy. So as kind of the lead for programmatic, it's where programmatic is very big, it's very broad. Where are we placing those bets? What are the things we need to focus on that are going to drive growth? Second is leading the team. So one-on-ones, coaching, mentoring, making sure that I'm there to support them and that everybody is performing to their potential. Um, and then I think the third is, being out with customers. We're a sales team, and whether I'm going out with folks on my team or cross-functional partners or whoever, you're in sales. You got to be out. You got to be talking to customers, building relationships, understanding their business, understanding how our products can help them solve their challenges, and um, outselling essentially.
Yeah. And when you were sharing that, it reminded me of like the importance of having a mentor or someone that we look up to that inspires us or guides us throughout our journey. Who was that someone, if there is someone that you looked up to or helped you create like that type of vision and breaking things down to the three stages? And also you mentioned like mentoring and coaching and being there for your
Yep.
team. Like these are such crucial leadership styles that not a lot of managers or leaders actually think that they have time to do them. But I'd love to hear like, was there someone? Is there someone? How did it come up?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been pretty fortunate in my career. I've had the chance to work with a lot of really, really great leaders. My current director being one of them. So, it, is there one person that I go to for coaching and mentorship? No, I prefer to think of, and a lot of people talk about like, what is your personal board of directors?
Mm.
Um, and so, at one point I took the time to kind of write it down and say like, here are the 7 or 8 people in my mind that are like my go-tos when I need help, when I need advice, when I need guidance. And I strongly encourage folks on my team. I strongly encourage anybody listening to this, take a few minutes and think about like, what are the areas in your life or in your career where you think having like a go-to for advice and guidance is going to be important. So I think about, for me, I think about like people leadership. as one area. I think of like sales skills as one area. I think of like, Google's a really big company. So, how to work within Google and understand the complexities of Google as an area. And then come up with 4 or 5 different things that like these are the key things that I need to think about to be successful in my role and in my career. And who are the people that I've met that I have a good relationship with that are the best at those things. So if I am really struggling with a sales approach for something, I've got 2 or 3 people on that list that I know like, oh, when I'm struggling with sales, these are like my go-to folks. When I'm struggling with a people leadership question on how to like coach somebody who might be struggling or something like that, I've got 2 or 3 people that I go to for that. And so really, I think anybody listening to this should take a bit of time and think about who is that personal board of directors, um, and make sure that you're, always putting into and building those relationships.
Wow, that's such powerful advice. And it's so true because I remember reading a book, I think it was Think and Grow Rich, where he said that he used to have like a board of directors who some were not living anymore. I think it was like Einstein or someone that he still had there, and he would ask them questions and they would guide him. And within your board of directors list and the people that you go to and ask, let's say that you've identified someone that can help you with like a sales pitch or a certain scenario that came up. How do you then go to that person? Do you say that I've really thought about this and you're one of those people that I'd love to come to? I mean, how is that discussion or approach? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever formally said to any of these folks like, "Hey, will you be on my personal board of directors, or will you be my mentor?" I think for me, at least, those relationships have always just kind of come up much more organically, where you work with someone, you get to know them, you show appreciation for their help, and then when you need it, you're in a position to say like, "Hey, I've got this thing that I'm working on that I'm struggling with. Can I grab 30 minutes, get you coffee, and pick your brain for a bit?" And it's kind of that simple. And um, I think I'm that for others. And so a bit of it is like paying it forward. And if you find time for people when they need you, when you need others, they'll find time for you. And it's just kind of like this. It's the great circle of life of business mentorship.
Absolutely. And I find so much strength in that. Like just saying, you know what, I'm struggling with this. You know a little bit better. So can you help me? How do I overcome it? What can I learn from you? And
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. And it reminded me of what you said earlier, that when you present something or when you do something or managing the team, and if things go well, great. But then if there's something that was a mistake, then you just reflect and you fix it for next time. It's just that
yeah,
mindset that is always growing.
yeah. And even when things go great, take a second and reflect on it and say like, could it have gone better? Maybe, maybe not. What made it go great that I should be replicating? Um, you know, I think we learn from mistakes, but learn from your successes.
Absolutely.
It's, I think it's just that kind of, I apologize, the cheesy overused buzzword these days, but like that growth mindset of
It
how are you
is.
learning
I,
and
I
how are you
was trying
growing and
not to
figuring
say
out
it, but
things.
it's so true.
I know, but I think if you call it out as a buzzword, it makes it less cringy to say it. That's what I'm going for.
But it's so true. I mean, like I couldn't think of any other way to describe it because it's you've shown that and demonstrated it in the ways that I felt like you were sharing. Ben, I feel like I could talk to you and learn so much. And in our tradition in Present Potential, what we do is we usually end with a question, which is during challenging times or obstacles that you've come across in your career journey or life, what is one mantra or words of wisdom that you kept repeating to yourself or you go to remind yourself that you can keep going? What are those words or learnings or wisdom
Yeah,
that you could
I
share with
think
us?
a lot of that, I would say, comes down to like, are you aligned to the mission or purpose of what you're doing? Um, and this might sound cheesy. I do genuinely like advertising. I think it's fun and interesting to work on, and I think it's important. Like I think it helps the economy work, and that creates jobs and it creates growing companies. And I think there's a lot of good that comes from advertising. Um, I'm sure there are some listeners right now rolling their eyes, but I do genuinely believe that. And so I think being able to like have that foundation of something you truly believe in, is really important. And I work a lot. I'm on the board of the big food bank in Toronto, and these are folks that are especially with since COVID have been working harder with more challenges than like anyone I can think of. And they are still the most like motivated, optimistic group because they believe in what they're doing. And they see the connection and the impact that they're having on the mission they're trying to achieve. And I think if you can ground yourself in that purpose, it will get you through those tough times.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. So mission, purpose, having that why I'm doing this and
Yeah,
driven to
exactly.
overcome those things. So thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and I've learned so much from our short discussion. And I'm glad that you've accepted to be a guest as well, to share your knowledge so generously. Thank you so much.
Me too. I'm really glad that you reached out. Glad we could make this happen.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And as always, remember that today is the most important day of your life. Until next time.